Well, welcome everybody. I'm Ed Friedman. A lot of you know me. I chair Friends of Merrymeeting Bay, have for a while. Welcome to our 26th season of speaker series. As many of you know, our organization is pretty unique in that we take a very holistic outlook on things pertaining to the environment, research, advocacy, conservation, education. Buzz through a few slides here quickly. Some examples of some research over the years, multi-year current study, a circulation study. I've worked on some invasive species, one that's small and doable. A lot of archaeology digs over the years, typically on land we've protected. Using caged mussels to look for contaminants in the Kennebec and Androscoggin, dioxins and PCBs. Have an ongoing water quality monitoring since like 1999, I think, about 20 years. We are fierce advocates. Fish consumption advisories, stopped an effort to put a big underwater tidal 50 generator tidal generation facility out in the chops years ago. Worked a lot on fish passage issues, turbine mortality, like that example there, and this eel here. Doing a bunch of work with PFAS now, PFAS chemicals, finger pointing at the Brunswick Naval Air Station, former base there. See what we can do about that. Education has always been important. If we don't teach the little kids, who will carry on? And this has been hit hardest with COVID. So we've not done a lot of hands-on with the kids, but we have last year and this year, and on a more controlled basis over at Bowdoin and Bowdenham elementary schools, and working on a history film project with the Bowdoin kids right now. And of course, tonight is part of our education program as well. And lots of land protected over the years. Our priority is wildlife habitat, valuable wildlife habitat, as opposed to recreational stuff. We just completed an easement protecting another 30 or so acres about a month or so ago when the Kennebec across from Swan Island. As I mentioned, if you do miss tonight's, or someone does miss tonight's presentation, go to our homepage, scroll down under education, and you'll see a speaker series video list or archive here, and that's where you'll be able to find this. And this is our series for the season. We're obviously right here. Should be a really good one next month, not because I'm going to be a part of it. I was kind of pressured into that by the speaker, but our speaker is a very well-known author, wrote a book called Where the Wild Things Were, and a number of other books about wildlife ecology. And again, I'm going to be there only because he bugged me to do it with him. So, but it should be good, and he'll do most of the talking, I hope, and I'll probably prompt him with a few questions. And yeah, I'm also pleased to let folks know that we have people on this call from coast to coast, from Maine to California, which
Excellent.
is the awesome thing about doing it this way, as opposed to doing it at the Brunswick Public Library. So our we do host this, as you know, October to May. It's generally the second Wednesday of each month. There'll be one exception this series, and I'll get to that. It'll be a couple of months from now. So our speaker tonight, Mauricio Handler, is a natural history and underwater cinematographer. He's based here in Maine, and as a cinematographer, director of photography, and producer at his company Aquaterra Films, he's contributed and collaborated on various documentary films and specials around the world, including The Humboldt Current, which is an HBO production, Perpetual Planet, Heroes of the Ocean, the BBC and Rolex production, Our Universe, a Netflix production. And Mauricio's produced and filmed his series Ocean Secrets and World of Oceans, both of which are distributed internationally to TV networks around the world. And his latest contribution aired this past summer on CNN, excuse me, in the 6-episode CNN original series, Patagonia, Life on the Edge of the World. Unfortunately, I don't get CNN, so I haven't seen it, but I have heard rave reviews from a number of people who do get that. He lives in Durham with his wife and business partner Julia and their English Springer Spaniel Tristan. So with that, I welcome you again, Mauricio. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and you can do your thing. There you
Thank
go.
you very much. All
There
right,
you are.
welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening, coast to coast, like Ed say. I want to thank Ed and Martin for putting this together. It's a lot of work for everybody, but it's important to stay in touch and be able to share opportunities and across all platforms of conservation and image making that bring us all together. Love what the Merrymeeting Bay organization is doing. There's a lot of things that need to be done to turn this around and make us all look not only good, but make the waters clean and safe and go back to a more natural state, which was the way it was. My view, I'm not a scientist, I'm an image maker, so I try to convey all the science and all those charts that you get through the association organization, and I try to put those into images, and that's where we are. I want to tell you a little bit about the purpose of this chat was to introduce myself and the work that we're doing here, because very few people know that we've been out in the field here for about 4 years, 5 years, quietly capturing sequences and moments that eventually are going to be a 1-hour special and the beginning of a larger series. But it all starts here in Maine. A little bit about myself. I was born in Chile. I was raised in the tropics in the Caribbean, and I ended up moving up to Maine in 2005 with my wife. From the British Virgin Islands, and we wanted 4 seasons and we wanted to have the cold. I know it's crazy, but we embrace it, and it also has a lot of similarities to Chile, where I was born, but I never lived there. I only went back as a cinematographer later in 2016. So there's a lot of reasons why we're here, but all of these backgrounds, all of my background is what leads me to want to make a film about Maine. Or about the wildlife that exists here. Basically, I was an underwater cinematographer in my later years. I worked up to it. I started out as a photographer for National Geographic magazine as an assistant, and I was a contributing photographer for the organization National Geographic for many years, and then eventually migrated into cinematography, which is motion. And the difference is that we are not really just capturing video to document something. We're trying to tell a story with all the elements of cinema and music and score and so forth. So it's a very complex art form, very time consuming and very pricey. So Maine is a goal that we have, but it's taken a long time because it's very difficult to film in Maine, which I'm going to get into a little bit more. Let me introduce you to my team. So I'm going to go ahead and share here so you get to see who they are. Let me get rid of this little hide floating thing. We're going to start right here. And hopefully everybody can see that, right? We're good. So basically, this is a people business. So my team is my wife, Julia, and we are co-owners of Aquaterra Films. And we both film extensively with cinematic quality cameras. So we're filming at the highest level, 6K. For anybody that knows a little bit about this, about 6 times the resolution of HD. Scott Fuller, he's a professor who's retired now from the University in St. Joe's, is an old friend of ours, adventurer, traveler, outdoorsman here in Maine, and he's our drone operator. So we carry 2 cameras, drones, and then of course we take all this underwater. Our little English Springer is always with us whenever possible. Whenever we don't have wildlife in the neighborhood, we like to share that with them. The tools that we use, before I show you the results of this, is we use Red Cameras. Is a manufacturer of cinema cameras in California. So it's a US company that produces really high quality Hollywood style cameras, and that's what we take underwater and above. We use also closed circuit rebreathers and propulsion systems and all sorts of things. So small tripods, big tripods, we have to hide under blinds for hours and days and weeks just to get maybe 30 seconds of something. So every time you see a wildlife film, appreciate how complex the process really is. You know, we use a wide angle on sliders, so it looks very cinematic moving through the forest. This is a closed circuit rebreather that I use extensively, which allows me to stay underwater for 5 hours. It has one limit, and that is 20-foot depth. And that's exactly what I want to do. I want to work rivers, lakes, ponds, and coastal waters no deeper than 20 feet. So this allows you to stay silent and allows me to approach my subject matter quietly, so they never know you're really there. This is the underwater housing with lights. So as you can see, it's really equipment intensive when you do films that are you wanted to make on the national screen or on the Netflix and the global stage. On the left here is a little propulsion system that I use. I don't know what happened there. Let me go to the next one. Thank you. Somebody. I'm going to stop sharing because I lost command here. Did somebody knock me out? All right, we're back here.
I'm still seeing two images now, Mauricio.
Okay, you're not seeing a bar or anything on the bottom?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. We'll carry on.
Seeing a little toolbar down there. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get rid of, which we never had.
I think you can just drag that with your mouse somewhere.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share again. Let me just do that again. It's better to do this right. I'm going to stop sharing. Forgive me for the interruption here, folks. All right, let's share again. Okay. All right, this bar doesn't want to disappear, but we're going to leave it like that. So we use these are underwater lights and surface lights that we carry for certain subject matter. So it's a whole bunch of equipment. And the latest addition to our setup is our production vehicle, which is a camper, but it's a camper that allows us to carry a lot of equipment and stay off-road and work in the field extensively in remote locations and not have to rely on water source or power or anything like that. So it's basically everything starts building up to allow us to stay out in the field. Any questions so far? Anybody? No? Okay, I'm going to get off of here one more time because I don't know what happened there and I want to not have that screen on there. I'm going to show you some of the clips that have led to where we are right now, because that's important to, before we go and show you Maine, I wanted to show you some of the productions that we have worked on over the past years. Worked for ESPN, CNN, Netflix, a lot of competitions, international film festivals, Curiosity Stream, Patagonia aired on CNN. That was a 6-episode series on the natural history of Chile. And our universe is actually currently showing on Netflix. Episode 6, The King Penguins Underwater, is the one that I worked on. And then the Ocean Secret series is a series that we produced, and that's basically our production and a full effort to take that, and it's now distributed internationally. All right, I'm going to show you a few shorts here so you can Chungungo, Mentor's Tale. Now, very important why I wanted to show you these first is that I went back to Chile, where I was born, in 2016 after many, many years away. But Chile has a similarity to Maine in the outer islands and the weather and the temperature. So the team that we produced, that we put together for our productions in Chile, allowed me to develop the skills and the teamwork that I wanted to bring to the Maine project. And currently, the main film, which is called Arrivals. American Waters is the series. Arrivals is the first episode. And we're editing in Chile. We're using the editors that I've worked with in the past in Chile. So let me show you this little short. We're just going to do like 30 seconds, 1-minute niplets of 3 or 4 films that allows you to see the kind of work that we do.
There are certain places that make us as individuals feel the most comfortable. Areas we've seen and smelled, touched and heard. matter the shape or size, these comforts can be found throughout all beings on this planet, sheltering us from the difficult questions of this world. It's a convenient habit, profitable business, or loving relationship. A welcoming place that would make no sense to leave. But sometimes we're at the mercy of forces we do not understand, ones that pull us away. And at the crossroads of comfort and turbulence is where the mystery lies.
So that little film that you just saw, or the beginning of it, is in northern Chile, which is very much like Maine: green water, cold water, whales, dolphins, pilot whales, sharks, all sorts of things, kelp forest. So the environment that I've been working in for the last 6 years is the kind of environment that we're bringing here to Maine. So return to Chile, we spent about 30 days initially filming, and that kind of launched a whole bunch of series. It launched Humble Current for CNN. I'm sorry, Humble Current was for Curiosity Street. We launched the Ocean Secret series, which we produced, and then we went back and did the latest one, which is for Patagonia, which was for CNN. All of that came from filming in Chile. So it's all about collaboration, finding the right team. And the idea is that my small team here is going to make it to the field, and then we're going to bring in talent from wherever if we need an additional camera of some sort to be able to finalize the film. This is Chile, and it's like 30, 40 seconds. It'll give you a good idea. Okay, I'm going to pop back here for a second. So the reason I'm showing you all this is because over the last 6 to 10 years, the technology has changed tremendously. We've been able to use drones and point of view cameras and high-speed cameras and high quality that was never available to us as independent filmmakers. This kind of gear that Hollywood productions would always have, and so forth. But having worked internationally now for the last decade, I've been able to bring those resources here to Maine, and that's what I wanted. I didn't want to make a film that was just capturing video of elvers and eels and alewives. I wanted to make a story that was compelling, that told their story. So that's where we're leading to. And right now we have amassed equipment both here in Maine, but we also have talent that can come in and out through our connections in the industry. And the idea is to tell the stories about all the creatures that actually Merrymeeting Bay org is trying to protect, including the American eel, the alewives. Our story on American Waters pilot called Arrivals is all about those two species in particular, American eel, the alewives, all the outer island birds, the puffins, the razorbills, also the horseshoe crab migration and the relationship between other species that exist here. So every time you go out now, when you see a bird, even if it's a blue jay or a cardinal or something, imagine it cinematically. Imagine that how beautiful it would look with the right equipment and in slow motion. Well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We've been following river otters. We've been following just beautiful scenics from the air, etc. So all that ties in together to come and make the film that we're after. I'm going to show you one more, and then we'll come back and talk about the main project. There we go. Yeah. Okay, so this film is, I'm leading now from Chile, where all these projects came, to self-producing, which is the next stage in the production scale of things. One thing is that you take and film, different scenes, and the other is to produce a series. So Ocean Seekers is a series of 3 hours, and a version of it is 6 hours. And we sold this internationally to various television stations, and basically it's airing worldwide. So I'm going to show you just the first minute, which is called Family, and this is storytelling now. This is what we're aiming to do here in Maine. And that barf, by the way, just came back again. I don't know how to get rid of it. Okay, here we go.
But some have evolved another trait, perhaps the most powerful of them all: family. Somewhere in the North Atlantic Ocean, these giants are sleeping. Female sperm whales are highly social. They live in family groups called pods and work together to raise their young, while adult males travel alone or move from pod to pod. Like all mammals, whales need to breathe air, so they sleep just below the surface and come up for air in between short naps. Sperm whales spend just 7% of their time asleep, less than any other mammal on Earth. So it's rare to witness a family slowly waking up after a deep sleep.
So imagine if we could do this or if we could tell stories like this about the animals that we care about here in Maine, and particularly animals that aren't particularly pretty, eels and elvers and alewives and horseshoe crabs. But that's exactly what we're doing. Our years in the field here gathering footage is proving that that subject matter exists. Now we have to put it together. And we jumped the gun a little bit because we've been at it for 4 years, filming every season. The difficulties in Maine, all of you that live here know this, seasons are very short. So all the migrations of all of these species happen up the rivers that you're trying to conserve. They last 3 weeks, 4 weeks at most. So I have to be with the team. We have to be in multiple locations trying to capture different scenes that we missed last year. Some years aren't as good as others. Sometimes the water isn't as high. The rains don't come. The rivers aren't flowing as they should. Sometimes they're flowing too strong. Sometimes they're murky. They're not clear. So all those elements force us to film year after year after year until we get enough material to put it together. In Maine, of course, the difficulties are everything from the weather to the visibility underwater, the short seasons, and the variations and variable in the ecological, what do you call it? The ecological issues that are happening at our time, the warming of the planet, the rains. Right now, we have very little snow. We're going to get some snow Friday, but it should have been snow already. All of those things play into the difficulties that exist in telling a story here. I had talked to Ed also about why some subject matters are missing from my efforts. And for example, doing lamprey and doing the sturgeons are something that it is a subject that I'm very interested in. I've been trying to get them, but they're very, very elusive. And just getting a few shots of them is not what we need. We need to tell and build a story around them. So that means getting a lot of time with them in the water, and the visibilities here where in the rivers where they live is extremely, extremely low. But the effort will continue. So the idea is that that you get a sense of what we're trying to produce here. And then I'm going to show you a few more clips that'll lead to the few ones that we have on the main subject. This is a film coming up now that I did that I actually work with Timber and Frame, which is a Portland, Maine production company. And I did the natural history aspect of it. And we went ahead and produced this for Fish and Wildlife and the Maine Conservation, Friends of Maine, Friends of Maine Coastal Islands, sorry. So this will show you a little bit of Maine and what we can do once we're here.
In the early 1900s, seabirds were nesting on about 90 islands distributed across the state. But because of either development or habitat changes or predators, at this point, over 95% of the terns and puffins and razorbills are nesting on less than 10 islands.
A number of years ago, we sat down and looked at all the historical data, which are the best of the best islands remaining out there that still need protection. And so we pieced together this network of islands, not just for puffins or terns, but all seabirds on the coast of Maine.
Most of us in the U.S. will never even see these birds because they are birds that prefer to be out on the water most of their life. They need a habitat that they are accustomed to, which is remote, rocky, safe, no people disturbing them.
So working in Maine to film those bird shots took 15 days in an area that's really restricted to humans. So Fish and Wildlife was gracious enough to issue me a permit strictly because I was doing the film and they were part of it. Otherwise, nobody gets a permit to be out there. This is a short on Maine Wild. Maine Wild was the first name of this idea that I had, which was to make a film about Maine wildlife. And this was a short piece, but it'll give you an idea. And then I'll show you the last version of, they're all just clips. There's nothing that's been edited yet. We're in the middle of starting that edit this month. So the idea, hello. That's great. Hello.
We're-
Yeah,
Keep-
we're not,
here.
we're seeing your computer, Mauricio. We're not seeing your picture. Now we see your thumbnails.
Okay, that's great. I lost Zoom. There's no Zoom on my computer, so that's good. All right, well, good. So let me give you a little end here. So basically, the idea started filming 3 or 4 species that were migrating throughout Maine, and for example, the eider ducks and the horseshoe crabs. That's a relationship that maybe some people know about, but the eider ducks have been teaching their little chicks how to eat the horseshoe crab eggs. So that's the angle that we're taking. It's not just showing the birds or the horseshoes themselves. So that's kind of, it's very difficult, it's complicated, and it takes a lot of effort. So I'm going to show you here a little streamer, basically, that I put together from our last. I just put together a few streamers from the latest footage that we've been acquiring here. Let me know that you can see it, please.
Yeah, we can see it.
Excellent, thank you. So the idea is to how can I put it, to find species that have relationships to each other. I'm going to go ahead and log in again, Ed. Let me see if I can find that link. Basically, is to be able to use species that have stories they cross paths. For example, the river otter at the end there in the winter, what does that have to do with elvers and eels? Well, filming them in the winter when the ice was already formed on the ponds, they broke a hole, dove in, and came out with a giant eel in their mouth. So there's a story there. So they're surviving on creatures that are not normally seen in that area. So it's a fascinating. The more we film in Maine, the more we realize that we're not done, that we have so much more to do. And that's kind of I just wanted to present the project to everybody. Sorry for the technical issues. The Zoom jumbies are always here. But if anybody has questions, I'd love to address those directly. Just tell me what you'd like to know about production, gear, or filming in Maine in general, or anything that you have in mind.
Yeah, I'm actually searching for that link to shoot you if you want to try and get back on, Mauricio.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and send it.
But I got a question. Not sure you touched exactly on this. To start with, how did you actually, did you get into photography as a little kid, or how did you?
I studied art, fine art. My mother introduced me to a camera early on, but I really, in my early 20s, the first time I ever had a camera, I took it underwater, and basically, how can I put it? I sold one photograph, and I said, all right, I can make a living at it. So I was very naive in doing that. But it was a love affair from day one, being able to be underwater in this really wild environment where things also wanted to eat you from time to time. I love sharks. I love big animals. And so carrying high tech into a raw nature environment is something I always appreciated. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to try and sign in. Let me just find you here, Ed. Did you send me a link? Thank you.
I did. Yeah.
All right. I'm on my way. Sorry about this. Join meeting in process. Doesn't matter how much you plan, it just disappeared, canceled out. All right, it's not letting me in. Anyway, let's just talk. So yeah, keep asking. I'll put a slide up so it looks a little bit nicer than what we have here. Ask me anything that you need to know regarding what we're up to here.
So here's a question from Tom, who's asking, and Stephanie says the eel footage was so cool.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Where did you get the music from?
Yeah, music is a big problem, huh? Music, I can only use it for teasers like this. So I download it from, I actually license certain from Audio Network is a company in England, online, obviously, where you can license small clips for small sound clips for presentations and so forth. All this music that you listen to is not allowed to be used in the final production. So none of this would be there. When you see a film series like the one Our Universe, which is now on Netflix. So if you go there, Mr. Morgan Freeman is narrating the series. Episode 6, which is Force of Attraction, is the one I worked on. It's all King Penguins. All the music is original for the series. So there'll be an orchestra, or there'll be even a single individual with a guitar is good enough, as long as you pay for the license and the rights to use it. So that's how it works. So music and images, you license them according to the project that you have.
There's a question from Victor here. I've read that schools of herring off the coast of Africa are so huge they can be seen from space. Did you ever have the chance to take pictures from that high up?
I didn't go that high up. I did go to South Africa to film the migration. Basically, it happens all the time, but it's not always good. The time I was there, it was not very good, but it's a huge migration, and you can see it from space, or let's say, tens of thousands of feet up. It looks like an oil slick. We do have also a migration of fish similar to that in Florida off the whole coast, and our alewife migration here, if you could see them through the water, is in the millions, right? So we have a very spectacular migration going on here every year. And the elvers, the American eel migration, is extraordinary. It's millions and millions of these tiny little eels that have come all the way from the Sargasso Sea to come up through rivers and live their lives in ponds and lakes here in Maine. They live for 20 to 40 years in those ponds, and then they make a one-way trip back to spawn at the Sargasso. Part of the conservation efforts that Ed and his team are trying to lead here is to allow those animals to make it through the dams and turbines, because we're losing many, many adults that were on their way to spawn and they never make the journey. So yeah, so if the highest I filmed or photographed from is 10,000 feet out of a helicopter, funny enough, Ed, with the door off over in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We're in an atoll and photographed a really beautiful frame of this atoll, but we had to go 10,000 feet. So I hope that answers the curiosities.
Okay. Here's a question from Vance. What are your who are your scientific collaborators? Specific universities or naturalists or?
Yeah, good question. None of this is possible without the knowledge of those on the ground. So whenever I travel internationally, a lot of the times we're working with the scientists that are doing the exact research on the subject that we're trying to film. So for example, if you're going to Patagonia to film the pumas, you work with those that are tagging and collaring the animals. Here in Maine, we would work with Fish and Wildlife. I've worked with the Fish and Wildlife team here that tags bears every year to do their assessment on health and counting. So you work with specific people that are doing the job. It's really hard to just get out there and try to learn it all within a month and film it. It's never going to happen. So you work with people that have spent years and years assessing the pattern, the behavior, everything that you need to know about the animals in question, so you can just be there at the right time. I could have all the equipment in the world and show up at a bear's den at the wrong time of the year. So you need the knowledge of the scientists. Many of them are associated with universities, nonprofits, and so forth. So here in Maine, I've been lucky enough to, since we live here, I know 5 or 6 of the things that I'm working on. So I just read up on the knowledge that I'm working on the subject that I'm working on, and then I just show up, and usually it's been very successful. The horseshoe crabs, for example, I've been researching them for many, many years. And the footage that we already had for our main film was really loved by a Netflix production that's in production right now. So they went ahead and licensed and hired us to produce a story about this. So we're going to have Maine on the highlights on a bigger project as well. So you're working, and what I was leading to is that I worked with scientists on that one. So you learn the egg stages, when the eggs are there, who's doing what, where, and how. It's fascinating. So you have to be a little bit of a biologist, a little bit of a scientist, an adventurer. You have to be a tech geek because we're full of equipment and everything has to be properly maintained. So, and you have to love what you do and have the stamina and the energy to keep going, because it's physically very demanding, whether it's on land or underwater.
Thank you. There's a couple of questions here. One from Kate. Have you been in contact with Gail Zalewski at UMaine regarding sturgeon? But there's also Stephanie who would like to ask a question verbally. So I think Stephanie Martin would have to unmute you or let you.
Yeah, I've got it.
Hello,
yeah,
Stephanie.
I've got it. Hi, Mauricio. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you bringing your talents to showing off Maine. I had the luck of visiting Chile earlier this year, and it was incredible. And also
Thank you
the
very
luck
much.
of partially growing up on Merrymeeting Bay, and I can see some of the parallels. This is a bit of a follow-up on the music question, which I don't mean to put too much emphasis on because obviously you are behind the footage and everything. But one of the pieces that I heard, and I don't know whether it was just the pre-release, unlicensed, not the final version, but something sounded a touch tribal, and it had me thinking. I work in climate sustainability, and it's a big movement to, it's more of an effort now to involve Native and Indigenous peoples whenever possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I did that one on purpose. That soundtrack is from a, what do you call it, a composer friend of mine in Chile, actually, who works extensively with the local indigenous population in Chile. And we do we do try to do that whenever possible. And we haven't even gotten to the point of the soundtrack, but I'll tell you, I'm going to give my contacts at the end. And I would appreciate if you could shoot me a note and put me in touch, because yes, I'm looking for local music. I'm looking for, at one point, we were also thinking maybe working with a local talent that would be part of the picture, that would walk us through Maine and the stories behind it. That would tie in the indigenous side of it. There's a lot to be done and a lot of angles, and so I do like that side of it. Very tribal, it's not necessarily John Williams doing the score for one of the Hollywood productions. So there's beauty and simplicity, and so I have absolutely interest in that. But the music that we have right now, none of this is at all part of our production. These are just little clips that I've had always on my computer, and I use them from time to time to be able to put streamers and show them off.
Sure.
Thank you very
thrilled. Yeah, thank
Yes.
you. Thrilled to hear you're considering it. And I don't know that I'm the source of any of those, but if I can come up with any connections, I'll certainly.
Well, if you or
them to you.
anybody here, and I'll say this now before I give my contact, but if anybody here does have any stories or ideas or has seen something really unique that's really related, not necessarily the albino squirrel living on the tree, because that's a really good one, and I tried to get that and I missed it, but I'm after water-based species if possible. So whether it's river, lakes, ponds, but if anybody has seen something interesting or an explosion of life that was just once a year, let me know. And if you know of musicians of people, of talent, all that is we're really entering now the stage where we need to, we're editing. The initial edit will give us an idea of where we are and what we need to get. So I'm looking at another year to 2 years before we realize that this is a final project. American Waters.
This
Go
is
ahead.
Arrival. Maybe you're saying this, but this is Arrivals, but give us a teaser on what the other episodes will be about. Where are you gonna go from the critters getting
Okay,
here?
so, well, the idea is the following. The idea, we have done the formula with the 3 posters that you see there is a good idea of what we've done. So the idea is to do American Waters, Arrivals, and Arrivals will be presented to hopefully a commissioner. If they like the idea, if they like the concept, then we would go ahead and commission, let's say, 10 episodes. And that would take us from Alaska to Labrador to the Florida Keys to Southwest US, all the way to rivers and lakes and ponds in between, where there's incredible wildlife stories. What would be in there? I mean, there's everything from beluga in the St. Lawrence all the way down to blind fish living in the middle of a desert. I mean, there's all these interesting stories, and it's a very selfish project as well, because we want to use our camper. So we want to go travel on land and stop traveling on planes and try and contribute a little bit on the positive side, and carry all this equipment that we have. So the idea is to really sell the project first, and if for some reason it doesn't work, then we would it'll be a standalone film, Arrivals. And then afterwards, we just continue to look for other stories and be able to continue to finance them. This is all self-financed, little by little. I mean, when the phone rings and we have to go do a project, we have to go. But the idea is to have more time in Maine and in the Northeast corridor, where the sun hits the coast first, where all the species arrive in the spring after a frozen winter. So those stories, we're the first to hit all that, and then that life spreads west and north and south into the US and into the northern Canada area. We're not sure if we're going to call it, because American is an interesting, in America we see American as US, but American can be North American as well. So we don't want to limit ourselves with the storylines. So we're still in debate on that one, but future stories can include any marine species from narwhals in the Northwest all the way to the kelp forests of California, which is unbelievable. In the same area here in Maine, we have stories that we haven't really touched yet, and including our great white shark friends that are starting to pay a visit more and more. We've done a lot of work with great whites over the years, so it's something that I would entertain, but it changes everything, and the risk factor and the complexity of filming in low visibility waters when you have an apex predator, it changes everything. So I've worked with the blues here, and they get very big. They get up to 15 feet. invisibilities are only like 3 feet. So all those blues that I showed, the few clips, that was all here in the Gulf Coast, and they're migratory species that show up here only during the month of September when the water's a little warmer. So that'll give you an idea of hopefully what's to come. But we're trying to do this one first, and it's been a really a family project. Just my wife Scott and I over the last 4 years, a couple of friends coming in and out here and there, but we are starting to get a grip of the storyline, and I brought in a friend of mine who's a director who can help guide this with different eyes, different perspective. Because when you're too close to the project, you kind of go in circles. Sometimes it's good to bring outside ideas. That's kind of where we are.
Well, thank you. You know, as we talked through off camera, there's obviously lots of relationships here between, as you mentioned, the horseshoe crab and the eiders, and we were talking about the eels and the contaminants and
Absolutely.
and problem is, and we can introduce you to a lot of people if you don't know them already, but problem you touched on is that at least for the kinds of species you're dealing with and the time of their arriving, it's all happening at the same time.
That is. Now we have finished our horseshoe crabs and our alewives and our elvers filming, so we're ready to tackle sturgeon and the lamprey that you mentioned the other day. I'd love to work with those a whole season. I could do those two full time now, because I think they would bring a lot to the picture. I think it would be amazing to have them. So that's something that I could start looking into for the next short season coming up. So everybody that's listening, if you know scientists or if you know anyone that could help out with this, with ideas and concrete information of location and so forth, I'd be more than happy to have an ear for that. I'm going to give everybody my email. I don't know if that's kosher, Ed. Yeah.
Sure.
So it's DP as in Delta Papa, Director of Photography, right? So DP at Aquaterra Films, AQUATERRAFILMS.com. DP at Aquaterra Films. And if you're on Instagram, please join us on Aquaterra Films as well. That's where we post all our findings and all our clips as they come out, and as we do the project here in Maine, but also anywhere around the world. That's where you're going to see firsthand. That's the only place we're posting. Our website is aquaterrafilms.com, but we don't really use much of that. We're just posting niplets from the field, which is more exciting for those that follow. And we love people to share their ideas with us. I mean, I need a lot of you live right there in front of things that are happening. So if you see it, imagine it. If we could access it and tell the story of that subject matter right in front of your yard. So a lot of stuff is happening. We just have one life and only 3 or 4 weeks every season here in Maine, so we have to take advantage of it.
Well, stunning work, Mauricio. I'm going to leave folks with the reminder, come see us next month. That Where the Wild Things Were is going to focus on apex predators, which you mentioned, and how they often can drive ecosystems. But I'll leave you with a comment here from Diana, who I think is in Arizona. I have some small experience with watching wildlife photographers. I'm a biological researcher. Photographers discover processes new to biology. You can see a lot just by watching, as Yogi Berra said. We need so much more watching, not to mention stunning cinematography. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And really, for all of you, we can't take for granted all the films that you see, all the documentaries on wildlife, Maine or from anywhere. But next time you see one, really appreciate how long it took to make, because each film takes about 3 to 4 years. And it's imperative that we make these films so people fall in love with the subject and then want to protect it. Imagine if we can make those lampreys look really, really cute, and tell a love story, right? Then maybe people would say, you know what, down with the dams, or whatever we have to do to protect them. So, and that's the effort. And I'll tell you, I'll leave it with this. The horseshoe crabs, which are not particularly cute, my producer over in Netflix did a storyboard with an incredible soundtrack, and the storyboard was in black and white, and it was emotional. It was beautiful. And so there are ways to turn subjects that aren't particularly pretty or endearing, but with the right team, you can do that, and then you can touch an edge, and then when people see them again on the beaches, they don't just pick them up. On the contrary, you flip them over and put them back in the water so they don't dry out, et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate everybody's attention to this little presentation. Sorry for the tech glitch here, but Zoom just disappeared. I can't get back on, so I'm going to leave it there.
Well, you're on. You're full screen, I think. Well, I guess we're just seeing you as I'm seeing you as a speaker. So you're
okay. Good. So I'm the only one that can't see anybody. So that's good.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So with there was a comment. I love horseshoe crabs from Elizabeth.
Beautiful.
And thank you very much for sharing. Great presentation, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, some comments like that. Yeah,
Well, appreciate it. No,
people
thanks
enjoyed
everybody.
it. Yeah,
Go ahead, Ed.
I think people will steer folks to the recording if if they know of someone who would like it and missed it. So
that'd be great. And please, anybody, feel free to email or post a comment on the Instagram account. And I respond to everything personally. I love communicating and connecting with folks that are out there on the talent, on the science. And of course, this is all for the people. And eventually, when this film is finished, because it will be finished, we hope to do a launch here in Maine, obviously one of the local places, and we'll invite the whole community that's been part of it just to show it. Let's see if we can do that soon.
great. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. And
Thanks everybody. Thank you very much for coming.
All right.